I've been in love with my sister's best friend for months. And before you decide what kind of person that makes me, let me say this, I didn't mean for it to happen. At least, not at first. His name is Daniel. He's the guy who always shows up with coffee when something breaks, who remembers birthdays he shouldn't, who laughs a little too hard at jokes that aren't that funny. He's also the man everyone assumed belonged in my sister's life, not mine. I watched him care about her in quiet, devoted ways. I told myself my feelings didn't matter, that I was just the little sister, the invisible one. But feelings don't disappear just because they're inconvenient. Somewhere between shared late-night conversations and stolen glances, I pretended not to notice. Things shifted. Lines blurred. And when I finally realized he was looking at me differently, I didn't stop it. That's when everything went wrong. Living with my sister Sarah was supposed to be temporary. Just until I figured out my career, saved some money, and stopped feeling like a confused 20-something pretending to be an adult. She had the apartment, the stable job, the confidence. I had a suitcase, student debt, and a constant feeling of being behind. And then there was Daniel. He'd been Sarah's best friend for years, long before I moved in. Everyone knew him. Everyone liked him. He was the kind of guy who didn't need to announce himself. He just showed up. Fixed things without being asked. Remembered details most people forgot. Brought groceries when Sarah was sick. Stayed late to help her clean up after dinner. The first time I noticed him, I told myself it didn't mean anything. I noticed the way he leaned in when someone spoke. The way his voice softened when he asked Sarah how her day had been. The way he laughed, not politely but genuinely, like whatever she said mattered more than anything else in the room. I also noticed how he barely noticed me. At first, I was relieved.
It was easier that way.
I could exist quietly in the background, setting the table while they cooked together, scrolling on my phone while they watched TV, pretending not to hear their inside jokes. I told myself I didn't belong in their world, and that was fine. But the problem with pretending is that eventually, it stops working. The more time Daniel spent at our place, the harder it became to ignore how much space he took up in my head. I'd hear his laugh from the kitchen and feel it in my chest. I'd catch myself waiting for the sound of his knock at the door. When my phone buzzed, some stupid part of me hoped it was him. Even though he never texted me. He texted Sarah every morning. Good luck today. Did you eat? Let me know when you get home. I'd see her phone light up and feel this quiet, ugly ache settle in my stomach. Not anger. Not jealousy, exactly. Just the awareness that I was watching something I wanted, but could never touch. One night, after Daniel left, I finally said it out loud. Not to anyone else. Just to myself, in the bathroom mirror. I'm in love with my sister's best friend. I said it once. Then again, quieter. It sounded wrong. Like a sentence that shouldn't exist. So I made myself a promise right then. I would never let him know. I would never act on it. I would love him silently, and I would survive it. At least that was the plan. It turns out loving someone in silence doesn't make the feeling smaller. It makes it sharper. Daniel started coming over more often as winter settled in. Cold nights, early sunsets, the kind of evenings where people naturally drift toward warmth and company. He'd show up with takeout or a bottle of wine, kicking his shoes off like our apartment was his second home. Sometimes I wondered if it already was. Sarah and Daniel had their rhythm. They moved around each other without thinking, passing plates, finishing sentences, laughing at things that happened years before I ever entered the picture. I learned the sound of their laughter the way you learn a song you didn't choose to hear, but can't escape. I was always there, just not with them. At dinner, they'd sit on the couch side by side while I took the armchair. When they cooked together, I'd set the table alone, lining up forks that no one noticed. When Daniel talked about work, his eyes went straight to Sarah, even if I was the one standing closest to him. No one told me I didn't belong. They didn't have to. The worst nights were the quiet ones. The nights when I'd be in my room pretending to read while I listened to them talk in the living room. Their voices would blend together. Easy, familiar, unguarded. I hated how much I wanted to be part of that sound. Once, during a movie night, Sarah went to the bathroom and Daniel turned to me, just for a second. "Do you want popcorn?" he asked. I nodded too quickly, like a dog that had just heard its name. When he handed me the bowl, our fingers brushed. It was nothing, barely a moment. But my heart reacted like something illegal had just happened. I spent the rest of the movie hyper-aware of every inch of space between us, while he stayed completely normal. Completely unaware. That was the cruelest part. I knew, without a doubt, that Daniel was in love with Sarah. Everyone could see it. The way he showed up for her. The way he waited for her reactions before relaxing. The way he looked disappointed when she talked about other guys, even though he tried to hide it.
And Sarah?
She was oblivious. She'd tell me how lucky she was to have such a great friend. She even joked once about setting him up with a coworker, and Daniel smiled politely while something in his face fell apart. I watched all of it. Every glance. Every gesture. Every almost moment that never became anything. And I hated myself for the thought that started forming, slowly and quietly, in the back of my mind. If she doesn't want him, why does it still have to hurt me this much?
I didn't act on that thought.
But I didn't push it away either. I wish I could tell you there was a single moment where everything changed. A clear line I stepped over, fully aware of what I was doing.
But the truth is worse than that.
It happened quietly, gradually, in ways that were easy to justify. It started with timing. I noticed that whenever Daniel came over, I made sure I was already in the living room. Not hiding in my bedroom. Not busy. Just present. When he sat down, I chose the spot next to him instead of across the room. Not too close. Nothing obvious. Just close enough to exist in his peripheral vision. When Sarah cooked, I stayed at the counter and helped, forcing myself into the conversation. When Daniel offered to help her, I jumped in first, handing him utensils, asking his opinion, laughing at his comments like they mattered more than they probably did. I told myself I was just being social. Then came the texting. One afternoon, after he fixed my laptop without making a big deal out of it, I sent him a meme. Something harmless. Something funny. I didn't flirt.
I didn't compliment him.
I just wanted to see if he'd respond.
He did.
Immediately. A laughing emoji. Then a comment. Then another message. And suddenly, there was a conversation where there hadn't been one before. We started texting during the day. About stupid things. Work annoyances. Random thoughts. I paid attention to what made him laugh and leaned into it. When I found out there was a TV show he loved, one Sarah openly hated, I started watching it on my own. That episode destroyed me. I texted him after one particularly emotional scene. He replied, finally, someone who gets it. That sentence stuck with me longer than it should have. Soon, we had inside jokes. References no one else understood. When Daniel came over, he'd bring 2 coffees instead of 1. He asked how my job search was going and remembered the details. He noticed when I was nervous before interviews. He fixed things for me the way he used to fix things for Sarah. And every time he did, a voice in my head whispered the same question. Is this still innocent? The answer depended on how honest I was willing to be with myself. Daniel still sat next to Sarah at dinner. He still texted her first thing in the morning. He still showed up for her in ways I couldn't compete with. But there were cracks now. Small ones. Moments where his attention drifted toward me before he caught himself. The scariest part? I liked it. I liked knowing I could make him laugh. I liked that he trusted me with his frustrations. I liked that he stayed a little longer when we talked, that his phone sometimes stayed face down on the table when I was around. I told myself I wasn't stealing anything. I told myself I wasn't doing anything wrong. But deep down, I knew the truth. I wasn't just falling in love anymore. I was positioning myself to be chosen. Sarah's birthday party was supposed to be simple. That was the lie I told myself when she invited nearly everyone she'd ever met to a crowded bar downtown. 20 people. Loud music. Cheap drinks. The kind of place where conversations overlapped and no one really listened unless you were shouting. Daniel was there early, of course. He always was. He hovered near Sarah like gravity pulled him in her direction, buying her drinks, holding her purse when she danced, snapping pictures of her with her friends. I watched from a distance, vodka tonic in hand, feeling stupid for ever thinking I had a chance. By the time the music got louder and the lights dimmed, Sarah was tipsy and glowing. She threw her arm around Daniel's shoulders and laughed about how ridiculous it was that he was still single. You're too good to be alone, she said loudly. I swear, I need to find you a girlfriend. My stomach dropped. She grabbed one of her coworkers and dragged her over, already halfway through an introduction. Daniel smiled, polite and tight, the way people do when they're trying not to make a scene. I watched his face, really watched it this time, and saw something crack. I couldn't do it anymore. I pulled him outside under the excuse of fresh air. The night was cold, the bass from the bar thumping faintly through the walls. He leaned against the brick and ran a hand through his hair like he was trying to calm himself down. She doesn't see me, he said suddenly. I froze. She never has, he continued, voice rough. 3 years, Emma. 3 years of doing everything right. And she still talks about me like I'm her little brother. My heart was pounding so loudly, I was sure he could hear it. I've been in love with her since the day we met, he said. And I'm so tired. He laughed once, bitter and exhausted. At least you understand me, he added quietly. You're the only one who actually listens anymore. Spending time with you it's the best part of my day. I didn't know how to breathe. Before I could say anything, the door swung open behind us. Sarah stumbled out, smiling wide, arms already reaching for both of us. There you are, she laughed. I was wondering where my 2 favorite people went. Daniel's face fell. Something in his eyes shut down completely. And that's when I did it. I don't know why. Panic, maybe. Or desperation. or some stupid instinct to force the moment instead of letting it rot inside me. Sarah, I said, my voice shaking just enough to sound serious. Daniel has something he needs to tell you. He went pale. Sarah straightened immediately, suddenly sober, grabbing his hands.
What?
Are you okay? He stammered, looking between us like a trapped animal. I jumped in again because stopping felt impossible now. He has feelings for someone here, I said. Her eyes lit up. Oh my God, she squealed.
Who?
She started listing names, laughing, nudging him after each one. When she mentioned the coworker from earlier, he shook his head. When she jokingly said my name, he froze. The silence that followed felt unreal, like the sound had been sucked out of the night. Sarah stared at him, then at me, and then she laughed. Not cruelly, not mockingly, just surprised. I knew it, she said, clapping her hands once. I knew it was you too. My blood turned to ice. She turned to me, eyes bright. Emma's had a crush on you for months. I've been trying to give you space to figure it out on your own. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. She threw her arms around both of us, pulling us together like this was the happiest moment of her life. I've been waiting forever for you idiots to say something, she laughed. Daniel looked like someone had just told him the world worked completely differently than he believed. He didn't correct her. Neither did I. Inside the bar, someone shouted for shots. Friends poured out to congratulate us. Hands clapped. Phones came out. Someone yelled that we were finally official. Daniel put his arm around me because everyone was watching. It felt stiff.
Wrong.
Heavy. And as the crowd celebrated, all I could think was one terrible, undeniable truth. I had everything I wanted, and it had never felt worse. Daniel didn't say a word on the way out of the bar. His hand was still on my shoulder, but it felt more like a restraint than an embrace. We moved through the crowd together, past people cheering, past Sarah laughing and waving at us like she'd just orchestrated the perfect ending to a romantic comedy. The night air hit my face like a slap. He stopped suddenly near the alley beside the bar, far enough away that the music was just a distant thud. He dropped his arm immediately and turned to face me. What the hell just happened? He asked. His voice wasn't loud. That was worse. I started, then stopped.
My mouth was dry.
My thoughts were a mess. Did you plan that? He asked. His jaw was tight, eyes sharp. Because it felt planned. No, I said quickly. I didn't plan that. I didn't know, Sarah thought. So you knew, he cut in. You knew she thought my feelings were about you. I shook my head. Not until tonight. I swear. He laughed, short and humorless. Then why did you push me to talk to her? The accusation landed hard. I panicked, I admitted. You were hurting. You were saying things, and I didn't know how to stop it. You didn't try to stop it, he said. You escalated it. I opened my mouth to argue, then closed it again. Because some part of me knew he was right. Daniel turned away, running both hands through his hair, pacing once like a caged animal before facing me again. Do you have any idea what you just did? He asked. She thinks I've been in love with you this whole time. I know, I whispered. She thinks everything I did for her was about you, he continued, voice cracking now. 3 years of my life just got rewritten in her head in 30 seconds. The guilt finally burned its way out of my chest and into my throat. She doesn't know, I said. She never knew you loved her like that. She really thought it was me. That doesn't make it better, he snapped. That makes it worse. We stood there in silence, the kind that presses in on your ears. Finally, he asked, was any of this real for you? I looked up at him. Yes. How much of it, he demanded. The texts? The show? The conversations? Was any of that you? Or was it all about pulling me away from her? That's not fair, I said, my voice shaking now. I didn't fake who I am. But you curated it, he shot back. You positioned yourself. You knew what you were doing. The words hurt because they were too close to the truth. I never meant for it to happen like this, I said. I never meant to hurt either of you. But you did, he said quietly. I nodded, tears blurring my vision. I know. Another stretch of silence. A couple walked past the end of the alley laughing, completely unaware that my life felt like it was splitting in half. Daniel finally leaned back against the wall, eyes closed, shoulders sagging. I don't even know what I feel right now, he said. I spent years chasing someone who didn't want me. And then suddenly, he gestured vaguely between us. You were there. You saw me. I still do, I said softly.
He looked at me then.
Really looked at me. The last few weeks with you, he admitted, they've been easy.
Good.
When I'm with you, I'm not trying so hard. Hope flared in my chest, sharp and dangerous. But I don't know if that's because I want you, he continued, or because I'm desperate to feel chosen. I swallowed hard. So what happens now? He hesitated. Sarah thinks we're together, he said. Everyone thinks that. I know. If I correct her, he went on, I destroy her. I humiliate you. And I look like a liar who's been leading both of you on. And if you don't, I asked. Then we live inside a lie, he said. At least for a while. I didn't say it, but we both knew the truth. I had already chosen that option for us. He studied my face like he was searching for something. Regret, manipulation, reassurance. I didn't know which one I was giving him. Do you want this? He asked finally. Yes, I said, without hesitation.
Ido.
His expression softened, just slightly. Okay, he said. Then we try.
Carefully.
Slowly. And we don't pretend this isn't complicated. He leaned in and kissed me. It was gentle, almost cautious. Nothing like the moment I'd imagined 1,000 times. My body reacted instantly, warmth spreading through me, but underneath it was something cold and heavy. Because even as I kissed him back, one thought screamed in my head. I didn't win his heart. I cornered it. Dating Daniel didn't feel like relief. It felt like standing on unstable ground, waiting for it to crack. On the surface, everything looked fine.
He came over as my boyfriend now.
He sat next to me on the couch instead of Sarah. He held my hand in front of her friends. He kissed my forehead when he thought no one was watching. Sarah was thrilled. She kept saying how happy she was for us, how she'd known it all along, how we made so much sense together. Every time she smiled at me, I felt another layer of guilt wrapped tighter around my ribs. The worst part was that Daniel didn't stop being Daniel. He still helped Sarah without being asked. Still fixed things around the apartment. Still knew her schedule better than anyone else. He brought her coffee sometimes, less often than before, but often enough that I noticed. I told myself it was normal. I told myself I was being irrational. But jealousy doesn't listen to logic. One night, he canceled our dinner plans because Sarah needed help moving furniture for a surprise she was planning. I stared at my phone long after the message arrived, rereading it until the words blurred.
She needs me tonight.
I'll explain later. When I heard his voice in the living room an hour later, laughing with her, lifting boxes, acting like everything was normal, I felt something ugly twist inside me. I stayed in my room. When I finally came out for water, Daniel smiled at me like nothing was wrong. Hey, he said. You okay? I wasn't. I asked if he was staying for dinner. Sarah answered for him, already ordering pizza. I said I wasn't hungry and shut myself back in my room, my chest tight and burning. He knocked on my door 20 minutes later. What's going on? He asked, confused. I couldn't stop myself. Are you always going to drop everything for her? I said. His face changed instantly. What? Our dinner was planned, I said. You canceled without even asking. She's my best friend, he replied. You know that. And I'm your girlfriend, I shot back. Or am I still second place? The words hung between us, heavy and ugly. He stepped back like I'd slapped him. That's not fair, he said. You knew our history. I know, I said, my voice breaking. That's the problem. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration flashing across his face. I can't believe we're doing this. Sarah has always been in my life. She always will be. I'm not asking you to cut her out, I said. I'm asking you to choose me sometimes. He looked at me like he didn't recognize me. I need you to trust me, he said. And I need to feel like I'm not competing with my own sister, I replied. Silence. He left without kissing me goodbye. I spent the night staring at the ceiling, replaying every word, hating myself for sounding controlling, hating him for making me feel replaceable. That's when it hit me. Loving him wasn't the hardest part. Trusting that I wasn't just the backup plan was. I apologized the next morning. I told Daniel I was sorry for making him feel like he had to choose. I told him the fight showed me something I didn't like about myself, that I was scared, insecure, and reacting from a place of fear instead of trust. He listened quietly, sitting on the opposite end of the couch like we were back at the beginning. I don't want to lose you, I said. But I don't want to become someone I don't recognize either. He nodded, relief flickering across his face. He said he needed me to trust that what he felt for Sarah had been built on an idea, on years of wanting someone who never chose him back. He said what we had felt different, easier, more real. I wanted to believe him. For a while, I almost did. Then, a few weeks later, I ran into one of his coworkers while apartment hunting. We shared an elevator ride. Awkward small talk, the usual. And then he smiled and said, "It's good to see Daniel happy again. He used to talk about your sister constantly." My stomach dropped. He went on, casually, unaware he was dismantling my fragile sense of security. Everyone at work had known. Everyone had seen it. Daniel's love for Sarah hadn't been subtle or shallow. It had been deep, public, undeniable. That night, I showed up at Daniel's place unannounced. Asked him the question I'd been avoiding since the beginning. Am I here because you chose me or because she finally moved on? He didn't answer right away. Finally, he said the words I'd been both craving and dreading. I probably needed to let go of her before I could see you clearly. The honesty hurt more than a lie would have. We sat there in silence, the truth stretched between us, messy, uncomfortable, unavoidable. And for the first time, neither of us tried to escape it. We talked for hours that night. Not the kind of talking where you try to win or defend yourself, but the kind where you finally stop pretending. I told Daniel everything. About how I'd noticed him long before he noticed me. About how I'd positioned myself closer. About how part of me hoped something would break between him and Sarah, even if I hated myself for it. He didn't interrupt. He didn't excuse it either. He told me the truth in return, that he built Sarah into someone she never actually was. That chasing her had become a habit, not a relationship. That meeting me had forced him to question what he really wanted instead of what he'd been clinging to. We didn't promise forever. We didn't pretend the past didn't matter. We promised honesty. A month later, I moved into my own apartment. It was small and imperfect, but it was mine. The first decision I'd made that wasn't about my sister or about Daniel. 6 months have passed now. Some days, the guilt still shows up in quiet moments, folding laundry, brushing my teeth, lying awake beside him. Other days, it fades behind laughter, shared routines, and the simple comfort of choosing each other again. I learned something I never expected. Love doesn't need a perfect beginning to become real, but it does demand that you grow into someone who deserves it.